You will clean my car by Sunday or there will be consequences. The sharp voice cut through our peaceful Saturday morning like a knife. I looked up from my coffee to see a middle-aged woman with a perfectly structured bob haircut standing in our driveway, pointing a manicured finger at my 16-year-old daughter, Emma. My daughter sat frozen in her wheelchair, her sketchbook forgotten in her lap. "Excuse me?" I said, rising from my porch chair. "Who are you, and why are you yelling at my daughter?" The woman turned to me with a look of practiced superiority. "I'm Marilyn Foster, HOA board member, and your daughter has been selected for community service this week, washing my car." She gestured toward a gleaming white SUV parked at the curb. We'd only moved to Willow Grove 3 months ago after my wife's death, seeking a fresh start. This was our first encounter with any HOA representative, and it wasn't going well. "There must be some mistake," I said, keeping my voice level despite the anger building. "My daughter has muscular dystrophy. She physically can't wash a car." Marilyn's eyes flicked dismissively to Emma's wheelchair before returning to me. "The bylaws don't make exceptions. All teenagers participate in community service. It's Section 15.4. Look it up." "I don't need to look it up to know my daughter can't lift her arms above shoulder height for more than a few seconds," I replied, moving protectively toward Emma. "Her muscles aren't strong enough." "That sounds like a personal problem," Marilyn said coldly. "My car needs washing, and she's next on the rotation. If she doesn't do it, there's a $200 non-compliance fee." Emma, always braver than she should need to be, spoke up. "Miss Foster, I'd like to help, but I really can't." "Save the excuses," Marilyn interrupted, thrusting a piece of paper at her. "Here's my address. I expect my car washed by tomorrow evening. Don't miss any spots." Without waiting for a response, she turned and marched back to her SUV. As she drove away, I looked at the paper trembling in Emma's hands, then at my daughter's face, which had crumpled in distress. "Dad, is this for real?" she whispered. "Can she make me do this?" I knelt beside her wheelchair, crumpling the paper. "Absolutely not. That woman is completely out of line. But what if we have to pay the fee? $200 is a lot." In my 15 years as Brightwood County Sheriff, I'd seen plenty of petty power plays, but targeting a disabled teenager was a new low. I hadn't mentioned my profession when we moved in, preferring to be known as just another resident. "Don't worry," I assured her. "There's no way this is legitimate. I'll handle it." But Emma's expression shifted, a familiar determination settling over her features. "Dad, I want to try." "What?" "No, absolutely not." "Hear me out," she said, straightening in her wheelchair. "Ever since we moved to Willow Grove, I've felt people watching me, not knowing how to act around me. If I try to wash her car and people see how hard it is for me, maybe they'll understand better about disabilities. Maybe even Miss Foster will learn something." I stared at my daughter, amazed by her wisdom but concerned about her plan. "Emma, you don't have to put yourself through that to teach someone a lesson." "It's not just for her," Emma explained. "It's for everyone who doesn't understand what living with a disability means. Sometimes people need to see to understand." Her words settled between us, heavy with truth. This was why Emma amazed me daily. Her ability to transform cruelty into opportunity, to find purpose in pain. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We'd go to Marilyn's house the next day, when neighbors would likely be out in their yards. But I silently promised myself that if this went too far, I wouldn't hesitate to reveal my position as sheriff to end it immediately. Sunday arrived, hot and cloudless. I helped Emma into our van and loaded her wheelchair, along with a bucket, sponges, and soap. As we drove to Marilyn's house, I could feel Emma's determination, though her hands fidgeted nervously in her lap. "You can still change your mind," I reminded her. "We don't have to do this." "I want to," she said firmly. "But stay close, okay?" Marilyn's house was exactly what I expected, a large colonial with perfect landscaping. Her white SUV sat in the driveway, already looking spotless. As I helped Emma from the van into her wheelchair, Marilyn emerged from her front door. Well, she said with a smug smile. "I didn't think you'd actually show up. We're here to wash your car," Emma stated simply. Marilyn's smile widened. Excellent. Make sure you get the wheels clean too. I'll be watching from the porch. I set up the bucket of soapy water next to the SUV, positioning it where Emma could reach from her wheelchair. Several neighbors across the street paused in their yard work, watching curiously. Ready? I asked Emma quietly. She nodded, determination etched on her face.
This is my job, Dad.
Just stay close if I need help. With visible effort, Emma dipped a sponge into the bucket. Her arm trembled from the exertion of lifting the wet sponge. She managed to reach the car's door, but couldn't raise her arm high enough to clean the window. Water dripped down her shirt as she struggled. From her porch, Marilyn called out, "You're missing spots. The whole door needs to be washed, not just the bottom half." Emma bit her lip and tried again, straining to reach higher. Her face contorted with effort as she pushed her muscles beyond their limits. After just a few minutes, her arms were shaking uncontrollably. "Dad," she whispered, "I need a minute." I stepped forward immediately, but Marilyn interjected from her porch. "She's supposed to do it herself. That's the point of community service." By now, several neighbors had stopped pretending to do yard work and were openly watching. Mrs. Alvarez from next door approached Marilyn's property line. "What on earth is going on here, Marilyn?" she asked. "Why is that girl in a wheelchair washing your car?" "Community service," Marilyn replied dismissively. "All the teenagers do it. My son is 16, and he's never had to wash anyone's car," Mrs. Alvarez countered, her voice rising. "And he doesn't have a disability." Emma, meanwhile, had caught her breath and was determined to continue. She dipped the sponge again and attempted to reach the hood of the SUV. The strain caused her to nearly tip forward out of her wheelchair. I lunged to steady her. "Careful, sweetheart," I murmured. "I have to show her," Emma said through gritted teeth. "I have to show everyone." More neighbors were gathering, murmuring disapprovingly as they watched Emma struggle. Mr. Chin from across the street approached me. "Is your daughter being punished for something?" he asked, confused. "Why is she doing this?" "Ask Miss Foster," I replied, loud enough for everyone to hear. "She insisted my disabled daughter wash her car as community service." Marilyn, sensing the growing hostility, stood up from her porch chair. "It's good for teenagers to learn responsibility. The rules apply to everyone." "What rules?" called out Mrs. Alvarez. "There's no rule about washing your car." Emma, determined to make her point, tried once more to reach the hood of the SUV. This time, as she strained forward, her trembling arms gave out completely. The sponge fell from her grasp, and she slumped back in her wheelchair, exhausted and soaking wet. A collective gasp went through the onlookers. Mrs. Alvarez marched up to Marilyn's porch. "This is abuse. You're forcing a disabled child to do something physically impossible for her." "I'm not forcing anyone," Marilyn protested weakly. "She volunteered." "After you threatened a fine," I corrected, stepping forward. "A fine based on a rule you made up." The crowd was growing larger, the murmurs more hostile. Marilyn looked increasingly uncomfortable. "This is a private matter between me and—" "This stopped being private when you made my daughter perform in public," I interrupted. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my badge. "I'm Brightwood County Sheriff Tom Bennett, and what you've done here today borders on disability harassment." The color drained from Marilyn's face. "Sheriff, I didn't know." "Would it have mattered if you knew?" I asked. "Would you have chosen a different disabled teenager to humiliate?" The neighbors were openly glaring at Marilyn now. One elderly man stepped forward. "I've lived in Willow Grove for 30 years, he said. "We've never had mandatory community service." "You made that up so you could have your car washed for free?" Mrs. Alvarez demanded. Marilyn sputtered, trying to find a defense. I was just following the bylaws." "Show us," Mrs. Alvarez insisted. "Show us where in the bylaws it says disabled children have to wash your car." Emma, having recovered slightly, spoke up. Her voice was quiet but carried in the tense silence. "I tried, Miss Foster. I really tried. This is my reality, every day. Some things I just physically cannot do, no matter how much I want to." The simple dignity in her words seemed to finally penetrate Marilyn's arrogance. She looked around at the angry faces of her neighbors, then back at Emma, still wet and exhausted in her wheelchair. "I might have overstepped," she admitted reluctantly. "Overstepped?" Mr. Chen echoed incredulously. "You forced a girl with muscular dystrophy to try to wash your car. That's beyond overstepping." "I'd call it abuse of power," I added. "Creating fake rules to take advantage of vulnerable residents. And she's on the HOA board." Someone from the back of the crowd called out. Mrs. Alvarez pulled out her phone. "I'm calling Richard Coleman right now. The board president needs to know about this." Marilyn's composure cracked completely. "Wait, please don't. I didn't mean—" "What didn't you mean?" I asked. "To get caught? To have witnesses? To discover your victim's father is the county sheriff? Which part didn't you mean, Miss Foster?" The crowd was now openly hostile, with several people recording the confrontation on their phones. Marilyn looked close to tears. "I'll wash the car myself," she said desperately. "I never should have, please. Just let me make this right." "It's too late for that," said Mrs. Alvarez, phone to her ear. "Richard?" "Yes, you need to come to Marilyn Foster's house right now. There's a situation." Within 20 minutes, Richard Coleman, the HOA board president, arrived. By then, nearly half the neighborhood had gathered. I had helped Emma change into dry clothes from the spare set we kept in the van, and she was now watching the proceedings with quiet dignity. Richard listened to multiple accounts of what had happened, his face growing increasingly grave. Finally, he turned to Marilyn. "Is this true? Did you create a fake community service requirement and target this disabled girl?" Marilyn, now thoroughly humiliated, could only nod. Richard turned to address the crowd. "On behalf of the HOA board, I want to apologize to Emma and her father. This behavior does not represent our community values. I assure you all that this matter will be addressed at an emergency board meeting tomorrow night." He then approached us privately. "Sheriff Bennett, Emma, I can't begin to express how sorry I am that this happened. Marilyn's actions were entirely her own and completely unacceptable." "Thank you," I replied. "I trust the board will take appropriate action." "Oh, we will," Richard assured me. "Marilyn's position on the board is already terminated, effective immediately." As we prepared to leave, neighbors approached Emma one by one, offering words of support and admiration for her courage. Mrs. Alvarez hugged her. Mr. Chen promised to bring over his famous dumplings. The next day, the elderly man who had spoken up, a retired physical therapist, offered to recommend adaptive equipment that might make some tasks easier for her. In the van on the way home, Emma was quiet for a while, then said, "It worked, Dad." "What worked, sweetheart?" "People saw me today. Really saw me, not just the wheelchair, but me trying, struggling, being human." I reached over and squeezed her hand. "You're the bravest person I know, Emma. But you shouldn't have had to prove yourself like that." "Sometimes that's what it takes," she replied with wisdom beyond her years. "Sometimes people need to see to understand." The aftermath was swift and decisive. The emergency board meeting the next evening voted unanimously to remove Marilyn from the HOA board. They created a new policy explicitly prohibiting discrimination against residents with disabilities and established a committee to review all HOA rules for accessibility concerns. 3 days later, a formal letter of apology arrived from Marilyn Foster. In it, she admitted her wrongdoing and expressed genuine remorse for what she had put Emma through. She wrote that watching Emma struggle had opened her eyes to the daily challenges faced by people with disabilities, challenges she had never truly considered before. The letter concluded, "I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know that you've changed how I see the world. I will carry the lesson of that day with me forever." Emma read the letter twice, then set it aside thoughtfully. "Do you think she means it, Dad?" "I don't know," I answered honestly. "But even if it's just a first step, it's something." A week later, the HOA announced a new initiative, a Willow Grove Accessibility Committee dedicated to making the community more inclusive for residents of all abilities. Emma was invited to be its first chairperson. As she wheeled herself into her first meeting, neighbors greeted her with genuine respect, not pity, not discomfort, but true recognition of her worth and wisdom. "You know, Dad," she told me that evening, "sometimes the worst experiences lead to the best changes. Miss Foster was awful, but look what came from it, a whole neighborhood that understands a little better now." I hugged her gently. "You did that, not Marilyn. Your courage changed things." Emma smiled. "And a little help from my sheriff dad didn't hurt." "Justice comes in many forms," I replied. "Sometimes it's handcuffs and courtrooms, but sometimes it's opening eyes and changing hearts. I think you delivered the more powerful kind." The incident reshaped Willow Grove for good. Marilyn stepped away from community roles, quietly volunteering at a disability advocacy group to atone for her actions. Emma's committee implemented ramps, accessible pathways, and awareness programs, making Willow Grove a model for inclusivity. Neighbors rallied around Emma, inviting her to events and seeking her input on community matters. Brightwood County passed accessibility ordinances inspired by her story, ensuring no one else would face such discrimination. Emma thrived, her confidence soaring as she led with grace, her wheelchair a symbol of strength. The fight was over, the community transformed, and Emma's courage left a legacy of empathy that Willow Grove would carry forward forever.